They said it was too fragile, too complicated, too beautiful to survive in war. The men at the Air Ministry laughed when they saw the design. Thin wings, a delicate frame, it curves where other planes had angles. "This thing will fold in half," one officer said. Another shook his head. "You can't fight a war with an art project." And maybe they were right, on paper. In the 1930s, military aircraft were built like bricks, strong, practical, reliable. But fast? Graceful? That was not the British way, except for one man, Reginald Joseph Mitchell. He wasn't a politician, not a general, not a man of wealth or pedigree. He was an engineer, stubborn, proud, and absolutely obsessed with perfection. He didn't just want to build another airplane. He wanted to build the airplane, something faster, lighter, and more agile than anything the world had ever seen. And he did it under the worst of circumstances, with little support, constant ridicule, and a body that was slowly killing him. The plane they mocked him for would become the most famous fighter in the world, the Spitfire, the machine that saved Britain from Nazi invasion, the sound that filled the skies during its darkest hour. This is the story of the man who built beauty in the middle of war, the man who designed hope with a pencil and a dream. This is war engineering. Long before the Spitfire, long before the war, there was just a boy, curious, restless, and always looking up at the sky. R.J. Mitchell was born in 1895 in Stoke-on-Trent, England, a working-class town of coal smoke and pottery factories. His father was a schoolmaster, strict but fair. His mother was gentle and encouraged his fascination with how things worked. Mitchell was not a dreamer in the poetic sense. He was a tinkerer. He loved taking things apart, clocks, tools, toys, and putting them back together better than before. By 16, he was working as an apprentice at a local engineering firm. By 20, he was drawing aircraft designs in his free time, even though he had never seen a plane up close. He just understood machines. After World War I, aviation was changing fast. Britain needed engineers who could think differently, who could design aircraft not just for flight, but for speed, efficiency, and precision. That's how Mitchell found his way to the Supermarine Aviation Works in Southampton, a small company building seaplanes. Supermarine wasn't famous, but it gave Mitchell something no big company could: freedom. He could experiment, innovate, and test ideas that others called ridiculous. In his early years there, he designed flying boats that pushed the limits of speed. He obsessed over aerodynamics, how air flowed across a wing, how drag could be reduced, how lift could be optimized. His colleagues thought he was strange, quiet, serious, and demanding. He'd stop entire projects over a single bolt that wasn't aligned properly. One worker once said, Mitchell didn't just build planes, he sculpted them. That attention to detail would soon pay off. In the 1920s, aviation was part sport, part science. Nations competed for the Schneider Trophy, a race for the fastest seaplane in the world. To Mitchell, it wasn't about trophies. It was about proving what was possible. His designs, the Supermarine S4, S5, S6, and finally the S6B, weren't just fast. They were revolutionary. In 1931, the S-Hawk B broke the world speed record, 407 miles per hour. For context, most military planes then could barely reach 200. Mitchell's aircraft was twice as fast and twice as sleek. That record turned heads. Even the Air Ministry, the same bureaucrats who'd soon doubt him, took notice. If a seaplane could fly that fast, what could a fighter do? But for Mitchell, the victory wasn't enough. He saw the storm clouds building over Europe. Germany was rearming, and he knew Britain's old biplanes, slow, fabric-covered relics of World War I, wouldn't stand a chance against modern German aircraft. He began sketching ideas for a new kind of fighter, one built not for show, but for survival. Mitchell envisioned a single-seat fighter, all metal, powered by a Rolls-Royce engine. It had to be fast, agile, and capable of climbing higher than any bomber. It had to be light, but strong enough to pull sharp turns in combat. And above all, it had to feel right to the pilot. Mitchell didn't just design for performance, he designed for grace. He once said, "If anyone ever tells you something can't be done, it's because they can't do it themselves." That line, half pride, half prophecy, would define the rest of his life, because the fighter he envisioned would defy everything the establishment believed in. It would also cost him nearly everything he had. By the mid-1930s, Britain's Air Ministry opened a contest for a new fighter aircraft. Multiple companies were invited to compete, Hawker, Gloucester, and Supermarine among them. Most designs looked similar, boxy, angular, practical. Mitchell's prototype looked different. It was smoother, slimmer. Its wings weren't straight. They were curved in a perfect ellipse. Other engineers laughed. "Pretty thing," one said, "but we're not designing race cars." But Mitchell knew something they didn't. Aerodynamics doesn't care about beauty. Beauty is aerodynamics. The elliptical wing wasn't an artistic choice. It reduced drag, spread lift evenly, and allowed higher speeds with less stress on the structure. It was mathematically superior, even if it looked fragile. Still, the laughter continued. Even within Supermarine, workers whispered that Mitchell was wasting time on a fairy plane. But he ignored them. He kept refining, testing, and sketching. He called the design Type 300. To the world, it would soon have another name, the Spitfire. But behind the brilliance, something darker was growing. Mitchell had started feeling sick. At first, just fatigue, then sharp pains. Doctors diagnosed him with colorectal cancer. It was advanced, and the treatments were brutal, but he refused to stop working. He was dying on his feet, one colleague said, but he wouldn't leave the drafting room. He knew time was running out, for him and for Britain. So he worked faster. Every curve of the Spitfire was drawn with urgency, precision, and purpose. He wasn't just building a machine anymore. He was building a legacy. By 1934, the Type 300 was no longer just sketches on a drawing board. It was a real frame of metal, wires, and hope. But the Air Ministry still wasn't convinced. Their memos were polite but cold. The elliptical wing is unnecessarily complex. Manufacturing will be impractical in wartime quantities. Recommend conventional design. Mitchell didn't argue with words. He argued with results. He and his small team at Supermarine worked long nights in the hangar, sleeping in the office when tests ran late. By March 1936, the prototype Spitfire finally rolled out for testing. It gleamed in the sunlight, sleek, silver, almost alive. The test pilot, Joseph "Mutt" Summers, climbed in. The plane accelerated, smooth, steady, and then lifted off. As it sliced through the clouds, onlookers held their breath. The Spitfire banked, rolled, and climbed with elegance none had seen before. When Summers landed, he turned to the crowd and said, "Don't touch a thing. It was perfect." Even the skeptics were stunned. The laughter stopped. The Air Ministry, once dismissive, suddenly rushed to place orders. But production wouldn't be easy. The Spitfire's curves were a nightmare for factories used to flat, simple planes. It required new jigs, new techniques, and skilled laborers who could build with art-level precision. Mitchell fought through bureaucracy, redesigns, and shortages. He could feel his health slipping, but he refused to step away. "Just a few more months," he'd say. "We're so close." Then, one day, his doctors gave him the truth. The cancer had spread. He wouldn't live to see the war he knew was coming. He kept working anyway. When pain made sitting impossible, he stood. When standing failed, he worked from home, dictating changes through his assistant. By June 1937, the first official production order for the Spitfire was placed. 310 aircraft. The British government finally believed. But Mitchell wouldn't live to see a single one delivered. He passed away in June 1937 at just 42 years old. His final words reportedly were, "I'm glad the Spitfire is going to be a success. It was worth it." 2 years later, his design faced its ultimate test. September 1939. Germany invaded Poland. Britain declared war. And in 1940, the Nazi Luftwaffe turned its eyes toward the island itself. The Battle of Britain had begun. The Germans expected an easy victory. They had more planes, more pilots, and overwhelming firepower. But they underestimated one sound: the high-pitched whine of a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The Spitfire had arrived. Pilots who first flew it described it like no other aircraft. It wasn't just fast, it felt alive. You didn't command it, you wore it. One pilot said, "The Spitfire was like an extension of yourself. You thought it, and it moved." At high speed, it turned tighter than the German Messerschmitt 109. Its 8 machine guns fired in a deadly concentrated burst, and that perfect elliptical wing kept the plane stable even under heavy G-forces. The same feature that people laughed at became the reason so many British pilots came home alive. Britain stood alone. Every day, hundreds of German bombers crossed the Channel. Every night, London burned. In those skies, the Spitfire became a symbol. It wasn't the only fighter. The rugged Hawk or Hurricane did most of the heavy lifting, but the Spitfire was the soul. It was the one everyone talked about, the one people looked up at and whispered, "That's our boy." Winston Churchill said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Those few flew the machine built by a man who never got to meet them." During the height of the battle, Spitfire squadrons intercepted wave after wave of German fighters. Though outnumbered, they held the line. Their agility, speed, and climb rate kept the Luftwaffe from gaining air superiority. The Germans began losing pilots faster than they could replace them. By October 1940, Hitler postponed his invasion of Britain indefinitely. For the first time, the war turned, and Mitchell's creation became legend. The Spitfire evolved through 24 major versions: new engines, improved wings, better armament. It served across North Africa, Italy, and even into 1945. Its combination of speed and grace made it beloved by pilots worldwide. Even German aces respected it. One Luftwaffe veteran later admitted, If I had to fight in one plane for my life, I would choose the Spitfire. Mitchell changed aircraft design forever. His elliptical wing, once ridiculed, influenced engineers for decades. His philosophy of combining art and function became the standard. Even modern jets trace aerodynamic principles back to his sketches. In 1942, the British government erected a memorial in Southampton. It reads simply, "He designed the Spitfire." War is full of destruction, but sometimes it gives rise to unexpected beauty. Machines built not just for killing, but for defending what makes life worth living. R.J. Mitchell's Spitfire wasn't just metal, rivets, and fuel. It was the embodiment of human resilience. A man who refused to listen to laughter. A man who worked through pain and doubt. A man who believed that precision and grace were not opposites, but partners. He never saw the Battle of Britain. He never heard Churchill's speech. But his work lived on in the roar of every engine that took off from a grassy British airfield. Mitchell's death didn't end his influence. His deputy, Joseph Smith, carried on his vision, refining the Spitfire through the war. Smith once said, "Every time I drew a new line, I thought of what Mitchell would have done." The men and women of Supermarine became heroes of production. They worked day and night, building Spitfires under blackout conditions, dodging bombs from German raids. When the Luftwaffe destroyed parts of the factory, they rebuilt in secret locations, farm sheds, bus depots, even laundries. They called it the dispersal plan, and it kept production alive. By 1945, more than 20,000 Spitfires had been built. Each one carried the spirit of its creator. After the war, as Britain rebuilt, the Spitfire became more than a fighter. It became a memory, a symbol of defiance, ingenuity, and the quiet power of engineering. Every year, at air shows across the United Kingdom, the distinctive sound of its Merlin engine still echoes across the sky. Crowds look up, children point, elderly veterans wipe tears from their eyes. That sound, the deep, rising purr, is the heartbeat of a nation that refused to fall. History has a funny way of turning laughter into legend. They mocked Mitchell's elliptical wings. They doubted his vision. They dismissed his grace as weakness. But when Britain's survival hung by a thread, it was those very curves, that elegance, that saved millions. In the end, they were wrong, and he was right. The story of R.J. Mitchell isn't just about a plane. It's about the courage to trust your vision when everyone else doubts it. It's about engineering not as cold math, but as art. And it's about the idea that sometimes one person's obsession can change the fate of the world. The Spitfire stands today in museums, perfectly restored, sunlight glinting off polished metal. Visitors lean close, reading the tiny plaque that says, "Designed by R.J. Mitchell." Most don't know the pain behind those lines, the laughter he endured, or the quiet battle he fought. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The pencil scratching on paper, the hum of a Merlin engine coming to life. And maybe, just maybe, you can hear a soft voice saying, "Don't touch a thing," because perfection doesn't need adjustment. It just needs faith.